2, 3, 4.
Welcome back. This is Chicken Philosophy, the Meccan Revelations, part 64, in which I will continue reading the Meccan Revelations, a translation of the Futuhat by Ibn al-Arabi, picking up right where probably me left off, I'm guessing, right? Yeah, it was me at the old, in Bombay. I mean, Mumbai. Right, so, I don't recommend watching the video you're watching right now. Oh, first of all, if this is your first time, maybe you want to start with part 1, Meccan Revelation part 1, or anywhere between 1 and 63. Okay, back to what I was saying. So for the people who see, those who know, those who, know to varying degrees, and there's various kinds of truth and various layers and onion layers, and some of them are active and some, it's like a brain, like if you do a scan of the brain when you're thinking about one thing, when you're dreaming, when all of these things can be true, but they're never all true at the same time unless you're having a grand mal seizure, and then that's not good, right? So that's why I divide myself into 4 different people, and even among those 4, there's different modes. Yeah, case in point. Hi, Gwydion. You want to be here for this part?
Yeah, you mind if I join you for this part?
Okay. So as I was saying, before this gets too weird, I just want to give you an exit. And the exit is in the form of Buddhist Books Podcast Padmasambhava Part 20. It just went up like an hour ago. We shot it last night, edited it this morning, and it's really good. It's really good. This thing you're about to watch, not so good. It's going to be a comment response followed by Michel Chodkowitz doing an introduction. We're not going to actually get to any of Ibn al-Arabi talking. None of the great sheikh speaking, except for occasionally when Michel Chodkowitz quotes him. So yeah, if I didn't point already, here it is. Padmasambhava Part 20. Bye! Alright. So if you're still here, don't say I didn't warn you. You can always just click away. And, alright. So, once upon a time, this is Meccan Revelation Part 64. Once upon a time, Gwydion, you remember him, was doing all of chicken philosophy. There was a time when he had taken over chicken philosophy. And it was an interesting thing. I mean, basically, like, I was a little awkward coming on, in the first few episodes. Carl Jung 1, Carl Jung Part 2, up to whatever, Part 20. And just being like, okay, all right, what are we doing here? But then once Pew gave me the hat, and then I settled into being Gwydion. Then it was a show, and then it was like, all right, yeah, it's Gwydion, man, and so it worked out until one day someone came on and pissed off Gwydion, and then at the end of Meccan Revelation Part 10, Gwydion did his comment response.
Frankly, if someone's repulsed by me, be repulsed by me. You can click don't recommend this channel. And perhaps you think you're giving me advice because you assume that I want this channel to be seen by a lot of people. I don't. Be repulsed. Fuck off. I don't care.
Yeah, it was basically a little something like that. And so, in the great tradition of doing comment responses in Meccan Revelation videos, I was going to do it at the end, but I don't think anybody makes it to the end of most videos. And definitely not Part 10. Nobody was watching back then. It was like 4 people. Meccan Revelation Part 10, if you want to skip to the end and watch Gwydion have a meltdown and quit chicken philosophy, resulting in eventually the rotation that we have today and the chicken wheel and everything. All right, anyway, enough about that. Let's get to the first comment I wanted to respond to. On Carl Jung's Black Books Part 2. It says here, dude, just shut the fuck up and read. You're not the value here. Carl Jung is.
Go fuck yourself with a cheese grater.
Now, Gwydion, let's not stoop to her level.
Who's stooping? I live down here.
All right. Well, I think what I won't say Gwydion means to say, but what I'll say instead of that is, yeah, you know, like, there isn't an audiobook version of Carl Jung's Black Books yet, and perhaps chicken philosophy can annoy the fans of Black Books enough to push the Carl Jung Foundation and Sonu and everybody into the direction of making an audiobook version of the Black Books, because they get frustrated, because not everybody is into chicken philosophy. So, you know, that's one level I can go, you know, okay, yeah, you know, it's purported to be Carl Jung's Black Books, but half of it is me talking. All right, you got me. The other half is, guys, just buy the book. You know, I mean, save up, you know, if you, like, why are you watching it? I mean, this person who commented watched the first one, watched the second one, made the rude comment, watched the third one, watched the fourth one, and watched the fifth one, and finally unsubscribed and fucked off. So it was an interesting thing to watch. But yeah, you know, like, chicken philosophy is not for everybody. It's, as I've said before, mostly for myself. In fact, I'm just going to play an edited down version of a video response to another comment also on Carl Jung's Black Books Part 2. Let's roll it. Greetings. So this is a personal video. It's unlisted. So the only way to get here is through the link. I don't think that you would be interested in my show. That's the short version. And the thing is, okay, just in short, I'm doing this 100% for myself and for my own reasons, and other people and their enjoyment of it or experience of it is not even an afterthought. Whereas 99.9999% of people who have YouTube channels might be thinking of 10 or 20 or 30 different assumptions about what it means to have a YouTube channel and how to have a YouTube channel and what that means, or, you know, even a specific thing about Carl Jung, or a specific thing about a particular author, or a specific thing about psychology or history or anything like that, would have a long list of assumptions that I actively don't have. I set those assumptions on fire. Basically because that was the only way I could think of that I'd ever read the Black Books, was to make it into some kind of show. All right, so that was me just before recording Meccan Revelation Part 63, if it looked familiar to the people who are following the Meccan Revelation series. All right. Are we good? I'm hoping there aren't any bad vibes too much in spite of Gwydion. I think he's gone now. He just came in to say that shit because I didn't want to. I wanted to draw a distinction between the id, the lower aspects of my nature that might respond with such vulgarities. And for the record, don't do what he advised. Just don't. You can do it, but don't use a cheese grater. Okay, anyway. So then there's another comment, and don't worry, Gabriel. This one is a totally different, this is a positive comment. I used to, back in the day, Gwydion used to have a channel back in 2006. And there was one point where he started reading transformations, and he had Todd and Chris and, you know, rotating and sitting in a blue chair in the temple in the corner, just reading transformations. And I had a boss back then who said, no one wants to see you just sitting there cold reading. And so I made a response to criticism video that basically was saying, you know, this familiar stuff. It's not for you. Just don't fucking watch it, you know. And then someone had like a backhanded compliment where it was like, wow, this stuff is so impressive. If only you had, you know, production value and high definition and all this stuff, like you could really be doing something. And so I did a response to praise, which was just as angry as the response to criticism. And then, of course, there was...
Oh, death, pride!
Which was a direct response to the person who was saying, oh, well, you need to do this in high definition. And back then it was 2006, so high definition was a little bit out of reach for, like, everyone on Earth. I mean, how many billions of people have the ability to record in high definition now? It's more than one, which is a lot. Okay, I think, right? Am I wrong? Maybe I'm a little off in my concept of the way the world is. All right, so Gabriel, I'm going to reply. And you saw I responded already. You didn't click like on my response, but so I assume that you're busy. Probably busy. So Gabriel wrote, and Gabriel, you know, he seems to like it when I acknowledge him. So, hi, I'm acknowledging you. All right, anyway, you should make a random video talking about yoga. I feel like you have authority. Laughs out loud, or lol. So, yeah, it's a nice comment. There's nothing wrong with the comment, right? Especially on the surface. So I have a feeling that this is in reference to something that I had said in an earlier video. I don't remember which video it was, but Editor Edward, could you dig that up and play it right here? I don't want anyone to think that I'm pretending to be an expert in anything. So, and then that plus this from my website, you know, the combination. I'm guessing. I could be totally wrong. It could just be something else. But the combination of these two things might have resulted in that. And I just wanted to respond to that idea. Let's bring up the spectrum. So let's say over here is where you only value a thing, not you, but a person. This end of the spectrum is only valuing that which comes from the authority, right? I mean, not obviously the cops, as the word authority has a bad ring to it because of authorities and hierarchies and the ways in which they're abused and used and abused and stuff like that. Let's bring up the old bumper sticker from the 80s. Maybe that's from the 70s. I wasn't making memories in the 70s, so I saw it in the 80s, but maybe it's from the 60s. Fucked if I know. But yeah, so this kind of turned in, let's get rid of that. This kind of went a little too far, and so you have people over here who, you know, like, to varying degrees, like, question authority a little too much and get into a space where if an intellectual says it, I don't believe it. If someone goes to school, I don't believe them, you know, and I don't mean to do a subtle Southern accent while it's unconscious, and I apologize. But then they get into this, there's this weird sort of dogmatism, like the QAnon phenomenon, this anti-intellectual authority, like what, or appeal to groupthink within a specific, like, group mind. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. Like, there's a way that people have. Oh my God, there's a spider on the ceiling. Anyway. Yeah, so there's like certain specific things that all the people who question authority a little too much agree on. And so it's like, did you just trade one authority for another one? You traded a good one for a shitty one? Okay, whatever. But anyway, let's throw away this spectrum. Kind of that's my point. I mean, I acknowledge the importance and the place in the world for authorities, for teachers. Of course. I'm just saying that's not what I'm doing here. And it's also not what I want to be doing here. So I don't want to replace or change what chicken philosophy already is with instead a different program with the same face, the same books, and the same title in which I am purporting to be or acting as an authority. And me, the one up here, is going to feed all you little birds down there with my whatever. You know, not that, but you know what I mean? I don't want to do that. I would rather encourage subtly a changing of assumptions. It's like, Oh, I wrote a response here. I also wrote a poem, but it wasn't very good. But it was something like, okay. I'll get back to that. But first, let me read the response I wrote. So you remember the comment was, you should make a random video talking about yoga. I feel like you have authority. Okay, so I responded, I was thinking to read the Yoga Sutras and the Hatha Yoga Pradipika and such. Originally, that was going to replace Martin Luther once that was finished on the orange pedal, but then decided to go with Divine Pymander and maybe the whole Corpus Hermeticum for the orange pedal. Maybe after Tao Te Ching and I Ching, I'll do the yoga stuff on the white pedal. Also, the black pedal's eventual trajectory, that is Carl Jung's Black Books, as stated in episode 1, is getting thoroughly into Jung's head to deconstruct the effect he had on the foundation of the westernization of yoga. So that'd make a nice poetic symmetry. Until then, there's this, which is that thing my dad taught me when I was 6, which is a form of Tibetan yoga, you might say. So, yeah, I mean, I did 2 separate 200-hour teacher trainings in yoga, one in California, one in Mysore, India, and then almost completed the 500-hour training in Mysore, India when COVID hit. And then, then there was the lockdown and then shifting to Goa. And then I found other ways to manage my situation so that it was no longer like a dire situation that I had to go down the path I was going on. So I just sort of didn't. But yeah, I guess you could say I have some learning, but I wouldn't consider myself an authority in yoga, although technically I have the piece of paper that says I'm allowed to for people who check the paper, anybody could teach a yoga class, but I mean, who knows a little bit about it. But certainly there are students, there are people who have not gone through yoga teacher training, people who've just gone through like lots and lots of hours of yoga classes and read books and followed people who say stuff about yoga. There's newsletters and magazines and stuff like that, and they're far more of an authority, I would say. One thing that kind of gets me is like not having memorized all the names of all the tendons and muscles and stuff like that. And so like sometimes people will throw you a curveball and be like, so this stretches out, what muscle is this? And you're like, it's the quads. Well, yeah, obviously, but which one? And I'm like, I gotta go, so I hate it when that happens. But, yeah, I guess what it is I would like to live in a world where a person doesn't have to be an authority to share their opinion. And that's why the way that the disclaimer was worded earlier is because of my speech pattern, because my dad was practiced in front of a mirror as a child how to sound like an authority. And then I grew up around him and I just sort of ended up talking like him to the point where by the time I was 6 and 7 years old, people, said I sounded like a know-it-all just because of my speech patterns. And, depth of voice and stuff like that. So every once in a while I have to remind people that I'm not pretending to be an authority. And I also don't want to be an authority. So the thing was, when I was a teenager and I graduated from the Outer Order of the Golden Dawn, someone made me a teacher, And then I had students, and then I had hundreds of students, and then I did that for another 13, 14 years. And so I kind of stopped learning. I mean, I would go on Sundays, and then the teachers would come and be like, let's read some theosophy. And I'd be like, why the fuck are we reading this racist shit? I don't know, because of history, and there's a connection with Golden Dawn. And I'm like, why? I'm required to be here every fucking Sunday of my life, and you're gonna, anyway. No, that was later on, but Yeah, no, I learned one or two things, I think, on those Sunday meetings. But the point is, for the most part, yeah, I had authority, I guess, in these particular teachings or that one particular spin on those particular teachings. And I taught it, and I taught it again and again and again and again. And I taught the same classes over and over and over. And as the people would go through the grades, I'd teach, like I can teach a pretty good this, a pretty good that, neophyte, zelator, theoricus, practicus. I didn't teach Philosophus as much, but you can hold my own teaching a Philosophus class. Probably today, if for some reason someone said, hey, I'll give you, $500,000 if you walk over there, not too far, and teach a half-hour-long Philosophus class to a bunch of people who just went through their initiation. I could probably teach a class with the students would walk away from going, God damn, that was a good class, And I'm not to brag or anything, but I stopped doing that is the thing. And it's not just that I stopped doing that or I stopped doing it, but I wish I still did. No, I'm glad I stopped. And I'm done being a teacher, or an authority or whatnot. If reading something aloud and commenting on it is teaching, then okay, whatever. But as far as am I making sense? I don't want to have authority. I wasn't saying, oh, I don't have authority. Sorry, guys. No, I was saying for the people who are looking for someone with authority, look somewhere else. This isn't, for you. This isn't what I'm doing, and it's philosophically not in alignment with what I'm doing. So I mean, thank you for the comment, and I am going to be getting to yoga, but I don't consider myself authority, and I do want to. It's not that I want to consider myself an authority in yoga one day when I'm 90 years old, for the sake of having authority. It's more like I want to know what all the different onion layers are It's like with Buddhism. I know it's Buddhism, but I say Buddhism because I'm speaking English, and Buddhism became an English word, and I'm not going to suddenly affect a Hindi accent every time I say a word that comes from Hindi. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Some people don't know what I mean. There was a guy who wasn't Buddhist. He was Hindu. I mean, that's fine to be Hindu, And he was in Nepal, but he was from India. And he was like, why do people talk about tantric Buddhism? Buddhism Buddhism, he would say, it has nothing to do with Tantra. And I was trying to explain, but he didn't want to listen. And I mean, of course, because look at the color of my skin. Why would he listen to me when I explain why there's a thing called tantric Buddhism? It's because, 2,200 years ago, you're right. Well, there was no Tantra back then, at least not how we came to know it in the 4th century AD onward, But, it was an ascetic tradition like yoga or Jainism, and there was all kinds of abstaining from things like sex and most food and stuff like that. And then then there was Mahayana, which made it for the masses, and then there was Vajrayana, which brought in elements of tantric practice, which, yes, basically originated within Hinduism, kind of at the same time as they were being found within Mahayana Buddhism and developing Vajrayana Buddhism. And hence, for the past 1,600 years, there's been a form of Buddhism called tantric Buddhism. Dummy, And I'm trying to explain this, and he's like, Buddha. And I'm like, I'm done. Yeah, he can't handle the fact that I'm speaking, with an accent and listen to what I'm saying. And he's completely ignorant about what he's talking about, but he's making these grand statements, and he's an authority, anyway, or acting like one. What am I talking about? Certainly not that. The point is, with Buddhism, there's all these different subtle onion layers and different movements and different manifestations that exist today, and different manifestations that don't exist today, whose influence can be found today, like Yogacara Buddhism, which is fascinating to me. But it's there in the inception of Tibetan Vajrayana as well as Zen. And there's influence from Yogacara in those things, but you won't, like, you can look around and you won't find anybody like running a Yogacara Buddhist temple, you know. And that's really interesting. And, you know, and then, you know, something happened where the yoga that's taught in yoga classes, and I've talked about this before, I'm not going to go into it again, but yeah, kind of the main impetus to even buy the red book or the black books wasn't because I love Carl Jung so much that I want to learn more about Carl Jung. It's that I want to more deeply understand the influence that he had on the assumptions that people in places like the United States have on yoga. And so, yeah, the whole project, the whole Chicken Philosophy project is about yoga, basically. But, you know, yoga means unity. So there's like Catholic means universal, right? So yeah, there's, and, you know, and that's the thing, is like when an idea or a philosophy or a kind of wisdom gets locked in by a sense of cultural identity, it's like on the Tree of Life, you know. So like the Tree of Life is a perfect classic example. Someone who says, you know, that Kabbalah, you know, is Jewish mysticism, and Judaism is a real estate contract with God, and therefore Zionism. They're talking about one particular, probably flipped upside down interpretation of the bottom of the base of the black part of Malkut, right? And then all this other stuff is there in the teachings. Same with yoga in India. Enough about that. It's a little bit of a touchy subject, but it shouldn't be. It's only touchy because idiots get pissed off, and then like some of them are violent, you know. Not with yoga, and not as much, but certainly with this stuff. So without further ado, I don't know. Did we go anywhere? Did I say anything? I told you this wasn't going to be good. See, every once in a while I have to screw the pooch. You know, it was starting to get to that point where there was too much encouragement. I appreciate the people who were, you know, being really nice and saying they love this show and everything, but I have to, if I start to feel a subtle caging happening, that, oh, you like because of this, then I've got to break the cage, you know, which means sometimes that means making an entire episode that's just shitty. And that's Meccan Revelation Part 63, from the beginning. And Meccan Revelation Part 10 at the end. No, I don't know. I'm just talking shit. So let's get to the Meccan stuff. Bibliomancy. The lute will beg. Not bad. You need to become a pen in the sun's hand, with a capital S and a U. We need for the earth to sing through our pores and eyes. The body will again become restless until your soul paints all its beauty upon the sky. Don't tell me, dear ones, that what Hafiz says is not true. For when the heart tastes its glorious destiny, and you awake to our constant need for your love, God's lute will beg for your hands. Hafiz hit it out of the park again. He's got a pretty good track record. There was that one abusive husband metaphor that got a little, like, hard to... but the last two have been spot on. Not problematic at all. So, yeah, ideas Ideas are yours. Ideas are mine. Ideas don't belong to the authorities. They don't belong to this sect or that sect. They don't belong to that ethnicity or that national identity or... They're ideas. They're ours. Welcome to the human race. This is one synapse. That is another. We are part of a great brain that Teilhard de Chardin calls the noosphere. Teilhard de Chardin. Check him out. It's so good.
That was so good.
I think it's a 28-part series, I think. And then it sort of shits the bed right at the end of part 28. And let me know if you want me to do a part 29 at some point in the future, in the distant future. Let's do this. Okay, picking up right where we left off last time. For each... Oh, by the way, we're having coffee in a Latin Quarter. This is from Caravella. It's a really nice Caravella Cafe or something like that. There's two of them here in Goa. I don't know if it's like a chain beyond that, but so good. Oh, shit. Oh, shit. Like if you want bacon and eggs type breakfast or something, pancakes, this is the place. This is the fucking place. If you're in Goa. Anyway. And let's go with a little bit of Nag Hammadi and chill the fuck out, Edward. And notice I didn't wear my nerd glasses today because I wasn't doing the whole, oh, I'm Edward the nerd, who cares what other people think, to contrast against Gwydion, Like, no, I'm doing like when we were in Mumbai. Just wearing my new glasses. I like these glasses. They seem to fit me. The guy was like, oh, you surely want something from this wall. And I was like, I'd rather have those. And then it turns out these are like $10, and the ones he was showing me are like 200, So, but I liked the way they look. I don't know, it made me think of like a German scientist. Not in a weird way. That's better. Okay. For each station, you remember the stations? So there's the station of like being a servant, and then there's the leaving the station of being a servant and realizing how can I be a servant to myself when I'm God, like that kind of thing. So like different places in the journey of a saint where a certain set of assumptions are true and knowledge can be transmitted and received in that station that doesn't really make as much sense in a different station, right? So if somebody has attained like oneness and someone says, God loves you, and you're like, yeah, I'm separate from God and God loves me. Sure. But no, you don't be an asshole like that. You just say, yes, he loves you too. Yeah. And then you go love yourself some more. You know what I'm saying? For each station, there is a corresponding state. Oh, all this again. Okay. And a certain kind of knowledge. We're just talking about this. Or rather, a set of spiritual sciences. It is possible to experience the state characteristic of a station without having reached the station. And what? Yeah, okay. And conversely, it is possible to reach a station without experiencing its corresponding hal, which is state. Okay. Hal, remember. Only the ilm is important to the true salik, or traveler. What's an ilm? The celestial nomad. Oh, I love it. Oh, the celestial nomad. Oh. The celestial nomad who cannot be turned away from his goal by the temptation of spiritual joys. Yes. Yes. Dig it. But the ilm itself should be gone beyond. The individual who is no longer closed in by the stations. It is followed by hyra, perplexity, a dazzled stupefaction. Stupefaction, that's what it says. Not stupefaction. That's probably not a word, Edward. Stupefaction, I don't know. An absence of knowledge that it's like putrefaction. I would have thought it was putrefaction, but anyway. Maybe it is. Maybe they're just two different, whatever. Knowledge that transcends all knowledge. What? A dazzled stupefaction. An absence of knowledge that transcends all knowledge. In the same way, the divine essence transcends all perfection. That's one thing I love about, I don't love everything about this. Like when it gets into the Mahdi, and the helpers of the Mahdi, and the sword of the Mahdi. I'm like, oh God, stop talking about the Mahdi. And the best I can do is visualize young Kyle MacLachlan, with his sandworms to try to get through it. But this stuff, I'm right where, right there with you. I hear it. I dig it. It's the top of the tree of life. You know what I mean? A significant portion of this section of the Futuhat is devoted the poles, Aktab, Singh, Kutub, this is written in parentheses, which I assume they're there for some reason in the parentheses. A word that, strictly speaking, refers to those awliya who assume the highest roles in the initiatic hierarchy, although in a more general sense it applies to any being who holds an axial position relative to a specific station whose possession he represents. Parentheses, Ibn Arabi offers as an example the, quote, station of leaving all trust to God, end quote, Maqam al-something, whose pole at his time was his master Abdallah al-Mawruri, or relative to a specific community, for there is no place on earth, whether it is inhabited by believers or unbelievers, quote, without a saint whose presence God preserves it. By what? A saint by whose presence God preserves it. Oh, right, end quote. So like Aleister Crowley, right? It's just an example. You can fill in the rest on your own. One chapter is first reserved for the 12 Aktab, in the narrow sense of the word, as opposed to the wider sense of Aktab. If I were an authority, I'd probably know. But anyway, around whom the universe turns, meaning the 12 spiritual types. I think, I had forgotten the self and the I. I think Carl Jung made a mandala where the I is the center of the mandala and the self is the outside, or perhaps the whole mandala. And so, the other day, one of us was like, what's the difference between the I and the self, Carl? And it's like, he covered this. Sure, you read it in 2023, but come on, access the memory, dummy. What? Yeah. Anyway. Okay. The poles, the Quran, one chapter is first... okay. The 12 spiritual types, each of which is characterized by his particular relationship to one of the surahs in the Quran, and to a prophet whose heir he is, to whom the diversity of the successive poles of the Muhammadan community returns. 90 other chapters then describe as many Aktab? Is that an H or a weird B? I mean, is that a B or a weird H? In the broad sense, okay. Some of whom, such as the case for Abu Madian, assume the role of Kut, understood in its narrow sense. What's with the narrow and broad sense of these words that we've never heard before? Come on, man. The object of this long series being to illustrate not the ascending order of the degrees of sainthood, but the multiplicity of forms of spiritual realization symbolized each time by a hajir, a means of invocation characteristic of the maqam in question, taken from a Quranic verse. After a brief explanation dealing with the seal of universal sainthood, Jesus, already mentioned a number of times both in the Futuhat, especially in the first fossil in chapter 73, FASL, and in other works like the Anka Mugrib. There are 3 final chapters, each of which is over 100 pages long. The first, which develops a major theme in Ibn Arabi's metaphysics, concerns the divine names, that is, the divine presences, that the statuses of possibilities claim, statuses that are nothing more than forms that appear in God's being. I have a feeling that all that shit I said earlier was incomplete. I don't know, I just have that feeling. Sometimes I get that feeling. Like, I went off and over-explained some aspects and then went off on tangents, but like there's a basic aspect of it that I missed. And I'm going to listen for that and make notes. And Editor Edward, do you have any comments as far as things that I missed that you want to clarify anything about? There weren't any like severely hanging threads. There was, I just made a few notes. Just one thing to sum up. Chicken philosophy is about learning, not teaching. Authority would imply that I'd already learned. I know what I know if you know what I mean, to quote the great, what's her name? What I am is what I am, you what you are, or what? The name isn't coming to me. Aaron something? You know who I'm talking about. That song? Never mind. The point is, chicken philosophy is a vehicle through which I am learning. And I'm sharing that process of learning with whoever wants to come along for the ride. Same with Buddhist Books Podcast. It's the same formula. The next thing I wrote down was the word synergy. I know I did this and nothing appeared, but you can imagine. Synergy. The interaction or cooperation of 2 or more organizations, substances, or other agents to produce a combined effect rather than the sum of their separate effects. No. I mean, yeah, but whatever. The combined effect of the entities. Yeah, so... Yeah, talking about like the brain metaphor, the noosphere idea of like you and I are two brain cells having a synapse right now in the brain that is the collective, human or maybe even beyond human, the mind of God, let's say, if we transubstantiate between the earth and the spirit realm or whatever. Or if it already is and was, and depending on which station you're at, the whole thing. The point is, rather than like a top-down thing or a bottom-up thing, you know what I mean? Like talking about, like, I think that the internet and the noosphere and all of that stuff and the QAnon phenomenon and, like there's some like Hank Green and, what am I talking about? Like, there's ways that this interconnectedness between us all, it can be a very positive thing. And at the same time, extraordinarily annoying and all-encompassing, and there's a great need to escape and limit one's interaction with it. All kinds of psychosis and mental problems can come from being too jacked in, to the web, because the brain doesn't care all that much necessarily about the health of the individual brain cells, though it should. And the whole thing is new. And, so I'm kind of talking about that, but that is not but the acceleration of something that started with the Gutenberg Press and Martin Luther, with the sharing of ideas. And of course, Martin Luther was an authority speaking top down, and people were saying, yes, daddy, okay, let me eat your little bird seed or whatever, you're vomiting up the bird mom that chewed it up. You know what I mean? So moving beyond that, evolving beyond that, allowing for the structures to take shape, allowing for the processing of data to happen not just in universities, but that too. Yeah, sure, that happens. I mean, these are powerhouses. I mean, there's a limited amount, but that's the thing, not a useless amount. For people who don't have the time and money and energy and maybe even, brain operating power, CMU, CPU, you know what I mean? Like, to be involved. And then there's the monetary incentives behind, and the hoarding of knowledge and all this. There's a lot of issues. Synergy is what breaks all that down. There's a documentary called The Internet's Own Boy about Aaron Swartz. And I really like Aaron Swartz. And it was the idea of knowledge being made free for everyone. And what's her name? Alexandra. Oh, I wish I remembered her last name. But yeah, there's, of course, people are going to argue against what I'm saying coming from, a financial perspective that, like, if it weren't for the hoarding of knowledge, then the hoarders of knowledge wouldn't be making money off of hoarding knowledge. Go flip burgers instead. No. People have a right to make a little bit of money off of their research or whatever, but like maybe a little less. Maybe you don't need to like keep people like maybe 5 years. For 5 years, only people who are paying for it can get the knowledge. But after 5 years, it becomes, like I don't know. I don't have all the answers. But synergy is the word that I wrote down, and I think it relates to some of the stuff that I said. And I don't know. Maybe I just left a bunch more hanging threads that are unfinished, but maybe it's not for me to finish them. I'll leave a bunch of hanging, dangling threads, and some of y'all can kind of like half pay attention to it and go, huh, what? And then, maybe complete the thought later in life, because it's not mine, it's not yours, it's ours, and we are God. And isn't it wonderful? All credit goes to him, which is actually us. So it's not the whole chicken egg Christianity thing necessarily, and yet it is. Which brings us to yoga means unity. I mentioned it, but I didn't really go beyond that, and I started talking about, chicken philosophy is all about yoga. Yoga is unity. So chicken philosophy includes Islamic mysticism, Kabbalah, interwoven throughout just because of my background. Yoga, it's kind of in the background, but it's the impetus for black books and everything. Martin Luther as like, let's look at the brains of white people and why they are the way they are and what's wrong with them. And maybe like why I think I'm such a know-it-all, or why I act like a know-it-all. And then reading Martin Luther, and he seems like a know-it-all. He seems to know more than 2,000 years or more than 1,500 years of church authorities, and with great confidence just blurts it out. And apparently he hallucinated about demons or something. They didn't get into any of that. I guess they edited those parts out of this. That's not the thing I find interesting about Martin Luther personally. Much more his effect, or like him as the result of something, and the hourglass center through which a certain type of thinking then spread out to a lot of people who then went on to do their thing, as it were. So what's the point? Yoga, unity. It's all one. We're all one humanity, right? So hence that's when I got into a little bit of the limiting things. That was something I didn't write this down, but it was something I wanted to kind of clarify, is the idea of layers and things that can be simultaneously true, but being to like a certain level of an onion layer can serve as a locking in It can serve as a barrier to other layers of the onion, and in extreme forms can become fascism, and can become very limiting, and limiting it's tragic when a human being, as far as we know, from an ephemerally, grounded perspective, as far as we know, there's nothing like a human being on Earth. How tragic is it when a human mind, with all of its vastness, thinks that it has to march in a particular way because of its cultural identity, and things that are associated with that identity are a yes, and things that are not associated with that identity are a no, and there's the need to make the things associated with one's cultural identity right, and the things not associated with your cultural identity, or God forbid, associated with the cultural identity of somebody who your, nation or whatever was, at war with, or had some kind of sadomasochistic, oppressor-oppressee relationship with recently, or maybe not so recently, maybe thousands of years ago or hundreds of years ago. So all of that, anything that comes out, you say, oh, well, Mohammed bin so-and-so says, oh, well, I'm not interested in what Mohammed bin so-and-so says. Oh, well, Professor Lee says, whatever it is, whatever the bias is that someone has, they can't get out of it. But, they love the things that are in the cultural identity, but only because they're in the cultural identity, and they're able to appreciate the beauty and wisdom of a thing, but only within those constraints, and only to serve to affirm the bias. So it's like the fascism when it's an extreme case, or the just racism or whatever, when it's less extreme, is like given a higher priority than the wisdom itself. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what I was talking about as far as the reference. I made an offhanded reference to yoga in India. Yoga being like a soft power for India, or part of Indian identity. It's like, yes, good work, India. Yoga came out of you. But now the world has it. And yes, people go to India for, inspired by yoga because it's where it comes from, and they get the authentic experience. But I don't know. But a lot of things that I don't need to go into right now, and it's not very popular for people of my complexion to talk on these subjects in this way. So moving on. Yoga is unity, e pluribus unum. I wrote that not to blow smoke up the ass of American mythology, but out of the many one. Yeah, I mean, it didn't really turn out that way, did it? Maybe it's still a work in process, and it'll eventually get its head out of its ass. But as far as chicken philosophy goes, at least, chicken philosophy is still aiming for the old American dream. I'm just fucking with you. Here, I might as well show you this. People laugh when I post that because they think that I've made America gay or something. But no, I made that a long time before the rainbow was too much 100% locked in with. This is more like the rainbow wand and the zodiac and all the different colors of the universe and stuff like that, as opposed to just red, white, and blue, or gold and whatever. I don't know. Anyway, so I think that pretty much covers it. I don't think that there was anything that you said that you didn't finish, but there might have been stuff that I just said that I didn't finish. Back to you. Okay, thank you, Editor Edward, whether you said anything or not. I'm just tripping on this spider on the ceiling. I'm going to go ahead and, even though, sometimes it happens, not very often, but sometimes the talking part of the chicken philosophy episode is more than half, and the reading is less than half. Sometimes it's a lot more than half, and a lot less than half. I had some shit I needed to get off my chest, and I didn't want to do it, because last time, have I run out of opportunities to point to the corner? Pymander's rant. That was because Buddhist Books podcast used to be a place where Pymander, or me with a Buddhist monk's robe on, Buddhist, would occasionally come on and like rant and rave in response to a comment or whatever else. And I think that's exactly what Pymander's rant was a comment response, and or something like that. And so now we don't do that. We've tried to improve the caliber of Buddhist Books podcast to make it a little more shiny, a little more focused on the books. Chicken Philosophy, happily, is not that. It's got a title like Chicken Philosophy, first of all. That should have been a clue. And so, like, the more I improve and refine and, like, make golden and good the Buddhist Books podcast, the more the opposite of that Chicken Philosophy is going to become. That's probably not true. It just felt like a fun thing to say. But in this instance, it's a little bit true. Because, yeah. And, you know, like sometimes, like one aspect of it is like that Carl Jung. There was a recent Carl Jung, and there was like one or two other things. You know, sometimes I get all wise with my Chikung thing or whatever, you know. And like one or two episodes where people are like, oh, this is a really good channel. This is a really good show. And then like 4 or 5 people subscribe, right? And then like that Martin Luther came out where there was like extra dirty jokes and disrespect about Martin Luther and stuff like that. I just sort of like went on default, and default for me, as I've explained, is talking shit about Protestants. And not saying it's a good thing. It's just saying it's my default. It's how I was programmed. Don't hate me because of how I was raised. I was raised to be disrespectful towards your religion. No. And mine. So see, you do that whole, hey, I'm one of you, so I can talk. I can say, you know, no. So yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna try not to be too like anxiety ridden about like you know, thinking about, you know, because the whole joke is that Edward, of the 4 of us, Edward is the one that worries what other people think, and it's a joke. It's a character trait written into the character of Edward, the guy who doesn't wear a hat or a yarmulke or a rose-crossed lawman or a monk's robe, but wears big, you know, glasses. It's written into his character based on a truth. But I'm choosing, and I'm telling you that I'm choosing, not to feel too bad about having made this episode, Meccan Revelation, part 64, exactly as it was. Because it was something that I felt that I needed to do. That's too strong of a word, but wanted to do isn't quite right. It was time. It felt like the right time. And I think there might be 1 or 2 folks, and that's the thing, is I try not to think too much about it, but I do anyway. I think there might be 1 or 2 folks who maybe watched this whole episode and was like, wow, this really humanized it, and it opened my eyes to 1 or 2 things. And that's great. That's great. I would rather have, you know, a smaller number of people who are keyed into exactly what I'm about watching this show, rather than a large number misunderstanding what I'm about, and or, you know, like thinking it's going to be one thing and then I'm over here going, oh, they want that? Okay, I'll perform that. The music that you hear in the background means I will never make money off of Chicken Philosophy. If enough people, you know, subscribe and this thing, I don't think it's a good idea for me to ever push the monetize button, because then all the shenanigans that I do, might come back around and someone might be like, you used my thing in your thumbnail, you used my music, blah, 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 blah. But the fact that I use copyrighted music just means that not a cent will ever get to me, even if I choose to monetize this channel, which I've already decided I never will. So this really is just a fun project for me to do. And maybe you enjoy it, and if you do, that's great, but it's not ultimately for that. It's not for the enjoyment of anyone but me. It's for my enjoyment, and it's like an audio diary, and like in the movies, like Captain's Log, Stardate, whatever, or more like Remington Steele and Lawnmower Man when he's talking to his whatever. You know what I'm talking about? James Bond, that guy, Pierce Brosnan, this guy. There it is. There it was. That was the episode. We didn't read much today. So that's how it is. Next time it'll be Gwydion reading Carl Jung, right? I think so. Check out Padmasambhava 20. If you watched this whole episode and you haven't yet seen Padmasambhava Part 20, it's actually good. It's actually enjoyable. The stuff I read is good. And the music, the music is good, and I do voices to a certain extent. And it's a very interesting tale from old Pakistan, back when it was Buddhist.